Hi guys, so Lee Anderson is an interesting individual, interesting character. He used to be a member of the Labour Party, but he decided to abandon that ship because he believed that the Labour Party didn't look after the interests of the working class. So he abandoned the Labour Party and he joined the Conservative Party because the Conservatives really care about the working class. They care about ordinary people. Yes, the party of the people. Anyway, so he was in the House of Commons on Monday where he was complaining about the BBC, and he said that he has ripped up his television licence. Let's hear what he had to say.
Deputy Speaker, now then, the findings of the Dyson report come as no surprise to many residents in Ashfield who have lost all confidence in the BBC.
Ashford residents have lost confidence in the BBC. Is that the most important issue to the people of Ashford? The BBC? Really, Lee? They're not concerned about jobs. They're not concerned about their children's future. They're not concerned about the impact of Brexit. They're not concerned about the pandemic and the possibility of another lockdown. No, these are not issues that are on the minds of the people of Ashford. The real concerns of his constituents is the BBC and how the BBC operates. Does anyone actually believe him? Okay, well, let's hear what else he had to say.
And I personally have ripped up my TV licence and they won't get another penny from me ever. Because in my opinion, the once great BBC is rotten and my constituents should not have to pay for a service if they don't use it.
Okay. I love how he couldn't find the word he wanted to say. It's like, where is it? Oh yeah, rotten. Okay. And then he goes on to say, well, they don't use it. So which is it? It's rotten? They're angry because it's rotten, or they're angry because they don't use it? Or is it because it's rotten they don't use it? This is an argument that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because if you're not happy with the BBC, you have a huge amount of choice. You can switch off. You can switch on to something else. There are hundreds of channels available today. This was, back in the 1980s, the 1970s, even maybe at the beginning of the 1990s, there was a very limited amount of choice that people had. Today, with Sky and even just regular digital channels, you have hundreds of channels available to you. So why is it a problem for these people? Why is the BBC a problem? It's not a problem. See, there's a bigger problem here at work. The Conservative Party want to eventually get rid of the BBC. They want to sell it off to the likes of Murdoch or someone like that. Now, but there's a process here, of course, and it's quite easy to see. The Tories put one of their people in charge at the top, the new chairman of the BBC, a Tory MP, a Tory anyway, a Tory donor, I think he was. Then the next step, of course, is to find some problem with the BBC, it acting not in their eyes correctly. For example, this ridiculous story about Diana, which happened 25 years ago. Like, they couldn't find something recent. They had to find a report. They had to conduct a report into something that happened 25 years ago about an interview. Anyway, then you have members of Parliament stand up and ridicule the BBC and suggest, the license fee should be torn up, should be destroyed, eliminated. And this is once again an attempt to poison the well, to convince the public that the BBC is the problem. The BBC needs to be done away with. The BBC has to be closed down and sold off, or converted in this sense into a private subscription service. But that's not going to improve things, or get rid of the problems that you actually think exist.
So does my right honourable friend agree with me that one way to make the BBC behave in the future is to make it a subscription service?
What does he mean by behave? What is the BBC doing wrong in your eyes? Now, if it's about it's acting too woke, the BBC has evolved. in the past, if you watched very old BBC or any type of British media, they generally had someone with reserved pronunciation. So this was somebody who spoke a bit like the Queen. Then there was a change, and you had Scottish voices, you had Northern Ireland voices, you had Northern England voices, you had people from Wales presenting programs and appearing, presenting the news, for example. And this was a huge shift, a huge change that took place. And there was resistance to that. Many people said, no, this is unacceptable. We can't go down this road. So the BBC evolved, and it got stronger because of that. It was more representative of the people. There seems to be this attempt that, we need the BBC to go backwards. We need to have it more representative of what? Some vision of Britain in the past.
Well, I would say to my honourable friend that I think he is absolutely right that one of the great challenges the BBC faces is to reconnect with the people that he represents.
With the people he represents? You mean like knuckle-draggers, bigots, and people who want to live back in the 1950s? These are the people that he represents. The people who voted for Lee Anderson, I'm sorry, they are bigots, knuckle-draggers, and people who want to turn the clock way back. They're not people who want to move forward, I'm sorry to say.
I think there is a widespread feeling that the BBC is too metropolitan-centred and that it has lost touch with the views of a large part of the British population.
I don't think that's true. Now, the vast majority of people today in Britain live in cities. So if you're talking about it being too much metropolitan, it's actually probably more representative of the population than it was in the past, or than the way you want it to be. As I said, most of the population live in cities, so it's going to be more representative of people who live in cities. The BBC still cater for people who live in the countryside, more remote areas. There is the regional aspects of the BBC as well. I think these people are inventing a problem that doesn't really exist. Now, it's a part of their plan, of course, to create a problem in order to provide the solution. And the solution, of course, is a subscription service. Sell off the BBC, like they want to sell off, or they are already selling off, the NHS. It's not about protecting the BBC or making sure that it provides programming for its constituents, or the constituents of these people. That's not their plan. Their plan is to sell it off. And of course, to sell it off, you have to undermine it first. And this is part of what's going to happen with the NHS later on. You're going to see, mark my words, you're going to see members of Parliament from the Conservative Party standing up saying, look, the NHS isn't working very well. It's too expensive. The doctors aren't doing their job correctly. What about all these people who got sick and they were not treated correctly? Or they're going to find problems. They're going to have commissions set out. This is going to happen after the pandemic. They're not going to attack it during the pandemic. They know it would not be politically savvy, but they will do it after the pandemic. There will be there'll be a scheme, a plan, and you'll see it rolled out through Parliament how they're going to undermine, where possible, at every turn, the NHS, with the goal of, well, we have to sell it off.
That is something which I think the BBC themselves recognise. With regard to subscription, as I said earlier, the licence fee is in place till 2027, when...
So Lee tore up his TV licence, then he'll have to buy another one next year. So it was a bit pointless doing that.
The current charter expires, but obviously there is bound to be a debate about the future funding. It would require quite significant changes to the way in which people receive their television to move to a fully subscription model, but nevertheless I have no doubt that that is a debate which has already started and will continue.
Deputy Speaker.
So, look, the BBC is not perfect. I'm extremely critical. I've been extremely critical of the BBC when it came to airing when it came to the Brexit debate, giving airtime to the likes of Nigel Farage almost every night. There was a saturation of Nigel Farage on the BBC. When it comes to debates, the BBC tend to present overly conservative-leaning voices. But on politics, I'm extremely critical of the BBC. But on other areas, I think the BBC provide extremely important, relative, and necessary programming. Nature programs, music programs, cultural programs, entertainment programs, top quality. They're so good that they're exported all around the world. They're emulated around the world. The BBC is the gold standard on many types of programming. When it comes to politics, I think it's a problem because of the impartiality clause. But in general, the BBC should be refunded, not defunded. It should be held up as a standard, not attacked from the likes of Lee Anderson and his knuckle-dragging public. Once again, they want to sell it off. Like the NHS, they want to sell it off. And to do so, they have to undermine it, criticize it, say it's not fit for purpose, and then they will be able to achieve their goal. Let me know in the comments section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?